recently we had an opportunity for a presentation in our staff meeting from one of our own people here, Brian Wassam. Brian is an attorney with one of the more significant influential law firms. He's a partner with one of those firms in the area here, and has done quite a bit of study in regards to this and presentations in a number of other professional settings on the impact of social media, not only in regards to a company or organization, but also individuals. Increasingly we're finding people who are getting into trouble one way or the other, and you've read one or a number of different articles in this past week of how lives and fortunes have been changed and how people have handled that. And so I've asked Brian to come and share a little bit of it with us today here, so would you welcome please Brian Wassam.
I've seen that video twice now, and it's got me really thinking whether my manscaping is as good as my landscaping.
I like the shirt at least, if nothing else. That's worth it.
It's Father's Day. You wear Hawaiian shirts. This is how it goes.
I hadn't heard that.
So, you ever notice how nobody invites a lawyer to speak about positive things?
That's true.
This is just a thumbnail, boiled down presentation of some of the things I talked about in some different settings. It's appropriate here. We can throw up the slides we have in this term. Okay, this is just a smattering of what people usually think of first when you think about social media. The term itself is actually broadening now, the definition of it so broadly that it's hard to pin down. There's so many things in our life now that are digital and social. It's not just going on a website and posting information or even texting it from your phone. Now you can put a little doohickey in your shoes and it will tell Facebook how far you've run. Don't get me started on the kind of technology that's coming, because I could go for hours. But for most people's lives right now, when we talk about social media, these are the things that we're talking about. Primarily Facebook. I don't have to explain to anybody what that is, but that's up to 600 million users at this point worldwide. And the last stat I saw was there's a majority, not just of adults, not just of people who are online, but a majority of all people who live in this country have a Facebook account now. And this is where we live. This is where we're interacting.
Which is a point, though. Whether you're involved with social media yourself or not, you're still impacted by it. And practically everyone nowadays is using email as well. And all these things apply to that as well, too. But whether you're using this material or not, particularly if you are, but even if not, you're still impacted by this significantly. You need to be aware of that.
Yeah, we talk about these things, and business people will say, why can't we just go back to the old-fashioned way of sending it by email? That's how quickly these things change. Twitter, same type of thing. It's a more boiled down prospect. It's 140 characters at a time, just like a single text message, although that's broadening now, even the type of information that you can share in there. LinkedIn, the same thing, aimed towards a more professional audience. It's becoming commonplace now to just submit your resume, or your LinkedIn profile rather, as your resume. Why print it up on paper anymore? Who needs that? YouTube is something that's been around for a while. So location-based media like Foursquare, Yelp, even Facebook Places tell people where you're at right now. And even at a game event. First service, I became mayor of Rockpointe. For those that know what Foursquare is about, you check in somewhere the most times out of anybody, and you're designated the mayor. It has a little game element to get you to participate.
So he is now Mayor Wassam, just so you know, for Rockpointe.
A little cool little crown on there and everything. So. But what kind of problems come out of this? As Randy mentioned, even if you're not using it, people can target you. Not very many years ago, when I was pushing carts at Meijer, they had a customer service rule of thumb where if you had a positive experience, you might tell one person, but if you had a negative customer service experience, you were going to tell 10. So that was meant to scare us. Now anybody with an attitude and a cell phone can tell the entire world that he had a negative customer service experience. That balance of power has radically shifted. We're all empowered to do really powerful things and really negative things if we've set our mind to it.
And that's an important issue. Everyone, and increasingly, and there's a great aspect to this, and especially when we talk about the spread of democracy or things like this, the empowerment that's coming to individuals. But here's the thing, empowerment without a sense of responsibility leads to some real issues with that. What is it that the great philosopher said? With great power comes great responsibility. Wasn't that Spider-Man?
Yeah, so saith Saint Spider-Man.
Yeah, true statement though, all the same.
So we can throw the first example up there. This is what somebody can do to you, and I love this anecdote. It comes all the way from the annals of internet history way back in July of 2009. musician nobody ever heard of out of Canada named Dave Carroll. He and his band are flying down to Kansas, and they had a layover in Chicago. And they look out the window in Chicago, and sure enough, they see the baggage handlers throwing around these guitar cases. So they're nervous. They get off the plane in Chicago, and it turns out, yep, it was theirs, and their guitar is broken. So he calls up customer service for United, and gets the runaround, talks to all sorts of different people all the way up the chain. They can't do anything for him. So he says, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to write a song. I'm going to call it United Breaks Guitars. I'm going to put a video with it, and I'm going to put it up on YouTube. Okay, fine, go for it. Well, anybody seen this video? No? Oh, wow. After one day, okay, 180,000 people had seen this video, just caught on. Okay, catchy little ditty gets stuck in your head. But those people told their friends. 3 days after he posted it, 500,000, okay, 500,000 people. After 1 month, 5 million people had seen this video, and after a year, 9 million people had viewed this. And every one of them has this little jingle in their head now that United Breaks Guitars. Better yet, you want to move to the next slide. When people are talking about this online, they talk about it offline, it catches on. So news shows are talking about this. You can buy your own merch that says United Breaks Guitars. It became its own thing. Best of all, 4 days after this video was posted, United stock went down by 10%. That's power.
One of the other things that you may have heard of even recently is that the military unit that was in the process of deployment that I think was Delta had charged. They're allowed to take 4 bags back with them. A lot of times it's their own equipment, military equipment they're required to transport. They charged the unit for the 4th bag, and so they accrued between the 14 of them $2,800 in charges. And there was such an offense with this. They posted a YouTube item on that, just on their issue, what happened with that. And I think it was within 24 hours, certainly within several days. Not only had Delta complete, because there was such an outrage or the idea of a military unit getting charged for this, an on-duty unit, that they changed, Delta within days, changed their entire policy, and every other airline did. The entire airline industry changed their policy because of a YouTube posting within just 24, 48 hours or so after the event happened.
Even though it turned out that what they were saying wasn't actually true, right?
Actually, and that's the other thing, it wasn't actually totally accurate, because the reality is DOD, Department of Defense, reimburses all the military for those. And so the guys weren't actually going to be out of pocket at all. Whether they knew that or not, I'm not sure, but they weren't actually going to be out of pocket on that. We would have been as taxpayers, okay? But the point was that the idea of them having to do that themselves, so even though it wasn't completely accurate, it transformed the industry with just one posting.
But nobody sees the other side of it. Nobody fact checks to see if it's true. They just know what everybody else is viewing on YouTube. But the majority of what I talk about when I talk about these things are not what other people can do to us, but what we can do to ourselves. Okay, we can slip to the next slide. I mean, all sorts of very smart, powerful, accomplished, professional people from all walks of life have gotten themselves into trouble online. It's not a teenager thing.
Even members of Congress, I hear.
Really? I hadn't seen that anywhere. Before I give you a couple examples, the question is why is it so difficult to hew the line? Why do people who should know better fall into these things? This is a sample of quotes from the lead-off lines of these different sites. These are the questions they ask you to try to elicit this information out of you, entice it out of you, even seduce it out of you. They go out of their way. Their entire business model is based on convincing you that this is no big deal. You're just sharing some random, useless information that's of interest only to your friends. You're just having a conversation, making community online. All of what you are just is that everybody else in the world can see it too. Things that you never would have posted in the newspaper, but it's that might go to a city or a town, but you'll happily put it on the internet for the entire world to see. And the consequence really is that the society as a whole's attitudes towards what privacy even means are radically shifting. This is really social engineering on a very massive scale. And when we react to these things that we see online, say, who would ever share these things in front of the whole world? It's because we're thinking with a different set of values. We are thinking about what the word privacy meant 10, 20, even 5 years ago compared to what it is now. People who, it's not just a teenage thing, these things permeate all generations, all demographics, but people as a whole are changing their ideas because it's just so easy to share this information.
That's the thing I think that needs to be heard. When you hear the idea of the social engineering on a massive scale, you need to realize that the norms, what would have been normal, has now shifted. And that expectation of privacy, or of even being a private person, has completely transformed, and is even more so. Whether there's a deliberate purpose behind that or not doesn't matter. You still have to cope with that on one level or another, whether it's in your own mind or self, or how you bump across with other people.
Right. And just to make it better, of course, once you get something online, it's not that just everybody can see it, but everybody can keep going back to see it, because it'll never go away. Yeah, maybe one piece of information might, but in generally speaking, once it's online, it's always going to be stored on a server somewhere. If somebody, you can delete it off your page, but somebody repeats it on their page, reposts it, and you can't take that away. You can't take it off the memory of the person's computer who was looking at it.
There was a young girl in Texas, I think it was, who was at a youth group outing, car wash for the youth group. The youth pastor took a picture of her amongst other pictures that were taken there, and was posted at one point in time as just part of what they would do, you know, to communicate what they were doing and all. This got picked up. Eventually, this girl ended up showing up in advertisements for Virgin Airlines. Unbeknownst to her, not solicited, nothing of that nature. It wasn't all that complimentary a presentation either. So her picture, her everything is being used in this Virgin Atlantic ad. And was floating out there for years until some action was finally taken in regards to it.
Right, and it's a very non-flattering picture of this, I don't know, 14, 15-year-old girl whose life is now crushed because this embarrassing picture, it was not just passed around the high school, not even just texted around the high school, but posted on billboards in Australia somewhere. And all because an intern at Virgin needed some copy for their ad, and they just went to Flickr and right-clicked and downloaded. But you know, these shots here are just aggregators. There's another way this information can stay online. There's people whose entire business model is to copy what other people are posting and try to tie that into advertisers. But this is why these companies, whether it's Facebook and Twitter or the aggregators, it's not hard to figure out why they're doing this. It's always about the money. You trace back the money, you always get back to the motivation. The more robust and unique set of content about people that they can get that somebody else doesn't have, the more they can sell that to advertisers, targeted advertising, search engines. It's a booming business. There's a reason why LinkedIn went public and got valued for billions and billions of dollars. But the more things change, the more they stay the same. There are whole different ways to get ourselves in trouble and embarrass ourselves, but the principles that guide our behavior, that should guide what we do, whether it's online or offline, are still the same. And I break these down into a couple of problems, what I call the embarrassment problem, what we can do to embarrass ourselves. Now, what would you think if you had, this girl had submitted her LinkedIn resume to you, and she's got, like, very impressive credentials and a nice little headshot, but then you type in her name into a Facebook page, which is more personal, and you come across a picture like this. What kind of impression are you going to get of this person? Now, when she posted this picture, or somebody posted it of her, more likely, she was thinking, hey, I'm not wearing my professional hat when I'm out at the bar partying with my friends. I'm wearing my personal hat. But the people that are reading your information don't know what hat you think you're wearing. You have one role, one impression, one name online. It's just you. Whether you think that you're compartmentalizing that into a certain area of your life or not, nobody else does.
One thing you need to be aware of on this is more and more employers are checking Facebook or social media as part of the employment process. We do that. Okay, when we interview someone for a staff role like that, I think the stat was like 90%
over 90.
Over 90% are doing that nowadays, and they get a more complete picture of the person through that than through other means. Another thing you might want to be aware of is there's pictures, data, material that I have received on you that you had no idea that I've received or have gotten. And some of it's been really interesting, guys. What y'all been up to sometimes. Now, sometimes that's just because you put it out there. Other times because someone will forward it or pass it on to me. Now, I'm no big deal on that issue, but here's the deal I think you should be aware of, and especially young people, because we think, oh, well, it's just teenagers. Teenagers particularly need to be aware that there are friends of friends of friends of friends. My certain suggestion to you would be this, is to all of us, is that unless you would be comfortable having it on this screen or spoken from this microphone to this entire crowd of whoever might be there, including people you don't know, I wouldn't post it and I wouldn't put it up. Having said that, there are still those of us who would still use poor judgment and still want to post that in front of a crowd like that. And that's not necessarily positive. We'll talk about that in a moment of time. But you just need to be aware, this stuff has far more implications and far more connections with people that you have no idea would even know of these things than you might want to. And how it presents you is a real issue increasingly.
So not only can you embarrass yourself, but you can embarrass others. You can let slip information that is confidential, that is not for public consumption, whether that's in a professional setting where that's what companies are worried about, right? Somebody's going to leak their confidential information, trade secret information, but even more often, you're just saying something about someone else that is either unflattering or secret or just not the type of thing, whether it's completely innocuous on its face, not the type of thing they want the world to see. And you carry forward, what these sites want is for you to carry forward this water cooler mentality. I'm just sharing this with a couple friends. I'm just whispering around the corner in an elevator at the water cooler to my friends. But you forget, you're intentionally led to forget that the entire world can still see this. And again, the more things change, the more things stay the same. Proverbs tells us here that the words of a gossip are delicious morsels that go down to our heart. There's just something enticing, empowering, burning in our souls almost to get it out. It feels cool. It feels good to have information that nobody else has. There's a U2 lyric. This is a secret is something you tell another person. There's just something about human nature that makes you want to tell secrets. And when that happens online, the consequences become even more severe than when you're whispering it around the water cooler. So a couple takeaways from this, a couple bottom lines. First is you are what you post. Like I say, nobody knows what hat you think you're wearing. They just know you. And they take the information they learn about you from a personal setting, from what they read, what they see, what they hear, and it all becomes their perception of you. And you've heard the phrase, perception is reality. It's in terms of their understanding of you and your ability to have a relationship with this person and your ability to influence this person, that is going to be completely dependent on the reputation that you have generally and with this person directly. And what you're putting online is a big part now of what people are drawing from when they build that perception. And finally, just is a word of caution on just how powerful these words are. I mean, if nothing else, this whole phenomenon is refocusing our culture on the power of words. Words have been very devalued in our society, and now we're forced to think about them again, how powerful they really can be. But this is one example that happened just recently, just a month or two ago. You probably saw this on the local news. A guy working for a local Detroit PR company is stuck in Detroit traffic, and he's very frustrated, and he wants to express this to the world. So he puts on Twitter this derogatory comment about Detroit drivers, and oops, I'm still logged into my client Chrysler's Twitter account, not my personal Twitter account. So this goes out under Chrysler's name instead of his own. So needless to say, he was fired. But not only that, his employer, the PR company, lost the Chrysler account over this, resulting in the termination of several of his co-workers. And now he is forever online known as the guy who swore on Chrysler's Twitter account. He's in his 20s. Okay, his career is now permanently stained by this. And the byline of this news article caught me. It says, and this is a quote from him, he says, "It's unfortunate that all of my work is being overshadowed by 140 characters." Now, his motivation in saying that is probably to kind of turn that around and kind of PR speak, oh, well, you should look at the whole body of work that I've done rather than just this one example. But what he's really caught on to something, whether he realizes it or not. The power of those words tarnished everything he had done up to that point, and probably what he will do in the future. And echoed underneath those words right there, we've got Ecclesiastes. Again, the more things change, the more they stay the same. It says, as a dead fly causes even a bottle of perfume to stink, which I don't know if, I've never actually smelled that, but I assume that's pretty smelly. So a little foolishness spoils great wisdom and honor. It takes a lifetime to build up a great reputation, lots of wisdom and honor to build up over the course of many years based on many actions. And one little fly, one little bad act, one little embarrassment, one little slip can ruin it all. So if you remember nothing else that I've said, remember this.
Thank you, Brian.